Hey guys, this is Angela and Chrissy, and today we'll be talking with you about poverty and homelessness. So I'd like to start out with some definitions, beginning with poverty. The definitions of poverty vary depending on your source, but the simplest one that I found comes from UNESCO, and UNESCO breaks poverty into two parts, relative and absolute. Relative poverty describes poverty in relation to the standard of living in your area. So that standard of living is going to vary by state, and it will of course vary worldwide. And the next part that they break it into is absolute poverty, and this one's a little easier to understand. It describes poverty in relation to how much money is required to meet basic needs. The definition of homelessness is a little clearer than the definition of poverty. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, homelessness is defined as an individual who lacks housing without regard to whether the individual is a member of a family, including an individual whose primary residence during the night is a supervised public or private facility that provides temporary living accommodations, and an individual who is a resident in transitional housing. Moving on to some facts on poverty and homelessness. So poverty and homelessness affects families in particular, and it can cause children to have a multitude of developmental issues, as well as problems like depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, antisocial behavior, drug use, and so on. 1 in 4 homeless individuals are children. Homelessness is difficult to gauge because definition and reporting aren't standardized or even possible in many cases because the government just can't find people to report that they're homeless. There's no effective way to do that in many cases. Domestic violence is the leading cause of homelessness among women. 20% of homeless individuals are estimated to have some form of mental illness. And as I mentioned earlier, with issues in reporting, that number is likely to be higher. So what does homelessness look like? This condition is often invisible, meaning your typical idea of a homeless person is not always what it really is. Just to give you some examples of what homelessness can look like, it can be a woman who resides permanently in a shelter or a halfway house, a man who resides in an abandoned home or building, a mother and her children who stay intermittently in a variety of homes, shelters, or abandoned places, or a woman who travels to different places each day seeking employment and safety. Finally, I'd like to give you guys some applications of therapeutic recreation. It's important to know that the role of our TRS changes depending on the environment. So it can have more of a medical standpoint if you're working for a hospital. It can have more of an empowerment or a community aspect if you're working out in the community for a shelter or something of that nature. It really depends on where you're at. But in all settings, treatment is non-judgmental. However, it's still structured and based upon rules and expectations so that things can get done and goals can get met. Another good thing to know is that leisure education gives alternatives to substance abuse and empowers individuals to make healthier choices. TR interventions can also help to teach social skills and everyday life skills at any age. A lot of people who are homeless may have forgotten how to interact socially, and they need to relearn that. And finally, interventions that involve children give them space to play in ways that are structured and unstructured. So many homeless children don't have the opportunity to play, and that's incredibly important to their development. So as a TRS, it's good to remember that they need that time.